Welcome back to another episode of Imagine Better, everybody. I'm your host, Mark Powers, and today, look who I have here, Mr. Chuck Gaidica.
Hey.
Where? Huh?
Good to see
Look,
you.
Even got a green screen here. We might show some weather for
Coming
today.
in from the north.
That's right.
How are you?
Welcome to the show.
Good to see you.
I am honored.
Oh, come on. I'm
I hit
glad
my
to be
mic.
here
I
with
don't
you.
know.
Yeah.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Sure thing. Yeah.
Boy, we were chatting, I think it was last week, and you were driving up with your family from Florida coming back home.
Yeah.
So you took a little hiatus for a minute?
Took a few, actually I was driving back, I think, from the airport. We did fly this time. We've got a dog. We used to have 2 dogs as of a month ago, but that's always a sad, crummy time.
Oh,
you know?
no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks. But so we do drive sometimes, but that's because we've got a dog with us. But every once in a while, my wife and I will escape, and it's sort of to just check on things and pull a few weeds and make sure everything is good. And
That's great. So before we dive into kind of where you're at now, I mean, what is you left Channel 4 when?
So, believe it or not, it's 10 years ago, August.
Wow, I did not think it was that long.
I left full-time.
Okay.
And then I went back 2 years for a morning show.
Okay.
I gave them 2 years on that. And so really, I guess 8 years if you look at it. But then what's interesting is post full-time television news, I start working with Blue Cross. And I wasn't even Medicare age yet.
Right.
And they asked me if I would, host a podcast on health and wellness, which I do. It's called A Healthier Michigan. And that's still what's going on. And then they asked me if I would do this infomercial on Medicare Advantage. And I thought, sure, it's interesting. I've never done an infomercial. And so it turned out to be something kind of in my wheelhouse because I had been speaking and still do to people who, to be fair, are kind of 55 plus, trying to reinvent life as you don't even have to be in retirement because who knows what that word means anymore.
Right.
And so, funny enough, they start playing that thing 900 times a year in all 8 markets in Michigan. So, Mark, I went from, being on TV every day to being on TV in some cases for a half an hour, almost every day on multiple channels. And so I'm really big with 65-year-olds now because they're like,
whole new circle.
Let me ask you this question. When should I do it? So it's
You're like
fun.
going shopping or something.
Yeah.
Someone comes up to you. Oh, that's great. I mean, okay, so I didn't realize it was that long ago. It didn't seem like it. But so what? I want to take a step back even further now. So what got you into that news space? I mean, what was it just like, it's a job back in the day, or was there
the news?
So what got you in the news?
I started out in pre-med. Yeah, I grew up in Chicago, left there when I was about 19. So I really consider, and so does my wife, we consider ourselves Detroiters because I've been here, almost 40 years.
Yeah.
But I went to Loyola University in Chicago in pre-med. So I was real strong in science and math. I went to a high school in Chicago where you could major in something, so I majored in science and math.
Interesting.
Lucky enough, had the grades to get into pre-med at Loyola, pre-med, pre-dent. And then God had a different plan. In the first half of the first semester, I thought, nothing against doctors. I just don't want to be one. And I look back now and I think I would have loved it because I love people and I love, wellness and I love working with people to make them feel better. But wasn't to be, so I dropped out, which did not go over well at home.
I bet.
And so I came home and I said, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
So I sort of did an inventory. I also love journalism, and how do you combine science and math? So it hit me about 3-4 months into this working. I went to work at Walgreens just to try to make some money. And it hit me, TV meteorology. It combines all of this stuff into one place.
Right.
Plus you get paid even if you're wrong.
Yeah.
So I thought, what a country.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So, I transferred to a different school. I actually got trained by the National Weather Service and got my first job in Evansville, Indiana.
Interesting.
Where I met my wife, Susan. And then we moved about 9 months later to Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And thought we'd be there a while, and 3.5 months in, I got a call from a headhunter. How would you like to move to Little Rock, Arkansas? And I said, man, I'm still in boxes.
Right.
And he said, we'll double your salary. I said, well, I'm your new guy. So we
luckily
moved.
you're in the boxes still, made the move quicker.
So we moved to Little Rock, and it was a great move. It was the first place we bought a home. My wife is pregnant. We're living life. It's on the Arkansas River. It's the state capital. I mean, it was just a fantastic spot for us. And then all of a sudden, I get a call, how would you like to move to Cleveland? And I thought, oh, well, I'm from Chicago. I kind of thought we'd head north at some point. Got to Cleveland, and they called me after the interview, and they said, good news, bad news. Bad news is there's no job in Cleveland. The guy who we thought you would replace is staying. But we're moving to Detroit, to Channel 2 in Detroit, and they're going to fire everybody, including this guy, Sonny Elliott. And I didn't know who that was because I didn't grow up here.
I remember watching him.
And so that's how I got to Detroit. I was 23 and a half, and Susan was 6 months pregnant. It was a really big move. All of these moves were really like life-altering.
Right.
Kind of rock
close
your
together,
world.
it sounds like.
Fairly close. The early part of my career was flying quickly, within 3 years. So I was at Channel 2 for 5 years and had a great run, and was doing the CBS Morning News as a substitute, flying to New York, or doing it from Detroit. And then Channel 4 called.
Right.
And I said, no, I think I'm going home to Chicago. I was already getting feelers from CBS in Chicago.
Interesting.
And Channel 4 said, no, you're not. We want you on our team. And so I made the jump, and the best move I could have ever made. I had a wonderful career. And for a couple of years, substituted for Al Roker on the Today Show, the Weekend Today Show.
Right.
And that was great.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's
so it was,
cool.
it was really interesting to be part of a... Chicago wouldn't have worked out because got 5 kids. I loved being home for dinner. And you move to some big cities, New York, Chicago, you can't get back and forth for dinner. So if there weren't a tornado or a snowstorm, I could be home for dinner every night between shows. And that was a priority for us. And I think I look back now, and our kids know it. It paid off big time.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you're a very faith-driven individual as well.
I am, thank you.
So I would imagine, obviously, your family is, and you have this foundation of faith in the home, and that what a great example to set for the children as they grow up.
Yeah.
So.
And even to this day, I think in this world we live in, how important it is that, and you'll read this from time to time, what's a good thing to do with your family? How about you sit down at a dinner table, that you're not all on the fly, you're not all on your phone. You're literally sitting down and saying, how was your day? What's going on? Here's what you can do better. You're grounded. Whatever.
That one happens a lot with mine. I do that. When now I'm a divorced dad, but I see my kids a lot. Yeah. Every day I take them to school. Every day I set the foundation of life in their brains. And like this morning, every day I pick them up around 7:50, 7:55. As long as they're at school by 8:15. I do that Monday through Friday, though, and so I drive from where I live in Harrison Township to Sterling Heights, where they live with their mom. But I've always sat down at the table since they were little babies in seats and at my house.
Yeah.
I've been divorced now 9.5 years, unfortunately, but it is the way it is, and but doesn't mean I can't be in their lives.
Well, sure.
So in trying to set an example on the foundation. An example in a foundation is important to me for them. Doesn't mean it always comes out the way I want it to, but at least I'm consistent at doing it.
Sure.
So I'd imagine that what you said is like having the family set the table. That says the kids will remember that, and then that they will carry that on.
And now they've had kids, and they're having more kids, and so we're blessed. We've, God willing, we've got our 8th grandchild due in February. I mean, it's kind of wild.
Congratulations!
So, everything goes fast, right, for our lives. So it's a joy. What a joy to have, to be able to be active enough and see it all happen.
And what a segue. Joy, the joy of life, you guys. Yeah. I mean, you're now about wellness. You're about reinvention, and you're about finding joy in life.
Reinvention is an intriguing thing, and I mentioned that I was speaking in this space, let's call it 55 plus. I went through a training organization called the Halftime Institute out of Dallas. There was a book written years ago by a guy named Bob Buford, Halftime, Moving Your Life from Success to Significance. Oh. And that title resonates very high with people, and it doesn't mean you're retired or even 55.
Right.
When I read the book, I was in my 40s, and I put it down, and I would pick it up 5 years later, I'd read it again, and it would speak to me differently based on context of what's going on. And so much wisdom came out of that book, and I invited one of the vice presidents from Halftime to speak at a conference that we were putting on at a church, and it was for baby boomers.
Okay.
And so it still fit this mold of kind of 55 plus.
Yep.
And, you know, to be fair, then, now, I don't have another half. I mean, the math doesn't work out. But it's a great phrase, right? What's your second half going to look like?
Yeah.
And so for me, it became an interesting thing to think about how to reinvent, I jokingly will tell people, and it's good for me to say that out loud, that I'm going to keep retiring until I get it right.
Oh, I like that. I've never heard that, actually.
Well,
I like that one.
And I think
I'm going to use that.
Well, you can. It's cathartic for us to say it out loud, because those days where we are messed up, we're mixed up, we're like, you know, God, what are you trying to tell me? Where do you want me to be? I pray every day some version of a prayer.
Yeah.
God, put me in, Coach. Where do you want me? Today it's with you.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this invite was coming. I didn't call you.
Yeah.
I didn't say this is going to happen.
I'm honored.
Well, and so here I am. And so I think I try to be open to the extent I can as a type A guy that wants to control stuff like, come on, God, tell me I need to do stuff by Tuesday. Just let me know. And it's kind of cute because I think God is up there saying, no, that's funny. I'll let you know. Yep. So I think this reinvention now is not just about 50, 55 plus. It's every quarter of life, 25, 50, 75. I met people, and I still do, who are young, who came through COVID. It's the great reset button of the world in our lifetime, maybe, where people have started reconsidering, how do I reinvent? Where do I find true joy? Is it being with the people in my life?
Yeah.
Is it being with Dad just in the morning? I don't mean just to diminish it, but when you're taking somebody to school, that's got high import to it. And if that's what brings you or your kids joy, sometimes we don't even know it at the moment until 3-5 years later. Like you said, my kids will say to me, you know, sitting down at a dinner table, that was a big deal. Yeah. And you're like, oh, so it did work.
Yeah, right.
But sometimes you don't know instantly that what you're doing. But I think this idea of reinvention, it now is not just about getting older. It's almost at any stage of life. Yeah. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. And sometimes you're going to have to reinvent, not because you want to, but because life sent you a little right curve, and you're like, uh-oh, they just laid me off, now what, you know?
Right. Well, and I think that ties into imagine better. Imagine a better life for yourself. Reinvent yourself. Sure. It's okay. It doesn't matter how young or old we are, you know, we're all on the same path of life. We all have different experiences that take us different routes, but we start here, we end here at some point, right? So it's like it's okay to reinvent. If you lost a job, it's not the end of the world, right? Reinvent yourself. Find that joy. Find that purpose. I have reinvented myself, and everyone who watches my show knows more times than I want to admit, because I joked around most of my life always saying, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and I hope I never do. There's a big part of truthfulness to that in my world. Like, why do I have to grow up? I mean, obviously we have to adult, we have to pay bills. But what I mean is, why can't I have fun along the way? I'm not being risky but be a kid. It's okay.
Well, and that idea of
maybe I'm looking at it wrong.
No. I think you're looking at it the right way. I remember when Susan and I were in discussions that I was going to leave TV news. I felt like I was being led into ministry.
Okay. And
I went back for a master's at age 50. Master's in Ministry and Leadership.
Nice.
Took me 4 years part-time. I was working full-time television news at Channel 4.
Yes.
I then had to go to management and say, listen, I've got a chance to go study in the Holy Land. So I lived in Israel and Jordan for a month.
Oh, wow.
And I studied every archaeological site in Israel in 3 weeks. It was amazing. But I remember that was sort of cementing that something was up in my life. And I would see my kids in the corner with Susan, sort of, like, what's wrong with Dad? What do you mean he's going to leave his job?
Right.
And I remember saying to them, I'm having the most fun being confused I've ever had. And that was another thing that was good for me to say out loud, because it was true. Right. I wasn't in charge of it. I didn't know why I was getting these inputs and feelings. I was leaving the biggest job in this market at the time. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I mean, is it right? And so I can look back and reflect on what went right, what went wrong. But what you were talking about of getting from here to there and imagining or reimagining, I think we all wish that it were a straight line. And I'm always encouraged that I look at the stock market, something like it.
Yeah.
And we all want it to go up. We don't care, as long as it's going up, we don't care if it's up and down, as long as the inclination is up.
Yeah.
So as long as your journey is up, whatever up means for you, it can be up and down as long as it's not going up and down while you're still descending. You got to figure that part out then, right? Be in prayer and deep thought about it. But, or zigzagging. You can come up with your own analogy.
Yeah.
It's never going to be a straight line.
As long as you get to your destination, whatever that is.
Right.
For you.
Yeah. And I'm not there yet either.
My life, I'd confuse GPS if it followed me. I've heard someone recently, well, I don't know, it was earlier this summer, so it wasn't recent, but they've described life like the corporate ladder. And then they paused, and like climbing the corporate ladder, just you start here and you work up top, right? And then they paused, and then it was a female. She looks at me and she goes, "That's not how it is anymore. It's more like a jungle gym."
It's like one of those shows. You're swinging from one branch to another.
Yeah, hoping that you land on the spot you need to. But, I mean, that's interesting. And so life is like that. Our experiences, I tell people, we're all on this journey, right? We all, we the good, the bad, the ugly of life, we're collecting these experiences across this journey. Yeah. It's those experiences that make us unique, different, beautiful in our own ways. That makes us the individuals we are. And sometimes, the big G-O-D looks down at me and says, you need to be doing this. And then I'm going, what?
Right.
Like when I started this show, I had no plans on doing this. I was freaked out. I haven't been in front of a camera in so long. And I was like, how am I going to fill this whole seat? I don't even know what to talk about. Yeah. And then
here we are.
And then here we are. We're just sitting down talking with Chuck Gaidica today. I'm like, hey.
In this book, Halftime, Bob Buford talks about this idea of jumping from one thing to another or swinging from one branch to another. So when you use that corporate analogy, one of the things that came out of the book that I think is good, that even though we may not know where we're going, being strategic, which can be a business or a personal word, depending on how you look at it, if you're going to jump from one branch to another, you may want to be, or there's a curve going up in your career. If you're going to jump, you may want to take that jump while you're ascending instead of waiting for it to be down here. In television lingo, we used to say, I'm on the beach, which means I got fired. I'm sitting on the beach trying to find the next job instead of being in the job and then finding the next job. So there is a little strategery. I think that's Will Ferrell being George Bush, not George Bush. But I think there's a little strategery in saying to yourself, if you're going to make a change, maybe you do want to concentrate on doing it when you're kind of ascending.
That makes sense.
To jump from one branch. It's kind of like that game you play with the kids with the linking monkeys, right?
I know what that is. Monkeys in a barrel. I was thinking Mario Brothers for a moment.
No, but you're just trying to hook on. But to try to hook on when you're so disjointed is very tough.
Yeah.
To try to do it strategically when you're on an upswing or you're in a good position, you're thinking, I think I want to do something different, bigger, better, maybe less, but it's still okay for me because I'm looking for joy. That's the big thing. So I just encourage people to think about it in that sense too.
So on the joy component, I mean, I think everybody wants joy in their life, right? Sure. I can't imagine somebody waking up going, forget it.
And that's different than happiness, right?
Joy is definitely different than happiness.
Happiness is more fleeting. I can be happy because I got a new Corvette. I can be happy because the kids came over tonight.
Right.
But it all changes tomorrow or the car goes away in 3 years. And joy is a lasting thing that doesn't necessarily tie itself to physical items either. It could. You may find great joy in owning a $10 million mansion someday because you hit the lottery.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to tie to things you can touch.
No.
Right?
It could be you turned around in line and smiled and that person smiled back at you. You found joy in that because maybe that changed the trajectory of that individual's day.
And I think it gives you something that you can take forward in life because it teaches you, well, if I do that more often, if I ask or if I say to somebody who's waiting on me, I appreciate you.
Yes.
I did that the other day and literally somebody looked up like, you could tell. Their look was, I don't hear that.
No.
I don't get that. And I thought, that cost me nothing. Yeah. That was free 99,
I know.
Yeah.
Spread more kindness, everybody. Come on. I had a couple years ago, I did this big campaign I probably bored the hell out of everyone who followed me on social media, but it was I just titled it my Smile Campaign. And then I produced all these little short videos, and it was just, every day I was just like, make sure you remember to smile. Like, I ask wherever I go, if I'm getting a coffee, if there's somebody who is serving on me in the customer service space, I ask them all the time, how is the day treating you so far? And most of the time, Chuck, they tell me you're the first person to ask. That's sad.
Yeah, it really is. It is. And
these people are busting their butts with a bunch of us in a hurry up type people all day long.
We have that chance to affect change by touch. And we're living in a world that by data and research, you're reading a lot of studies about wellness and joy.
Yeah.
We're living in a world where every age demographic says they're lonely. We're living in a world where we came through a period of time through the pandemic where don't touch, don't gather for Christmas, don't man hug, you can't get close. So we're living in this disjointed world, and thank God we're coming out of it pretty well, but we're still seeing anxiety in a lot of demographics, youth, all the way through adults. People are, gray divorce is increasing later in life. You kind of go, wow, you've been married 40 or 50 years, what's happened there? But it's just, all these demographics come together, and I think it's people searching for joy, they're searching for purpose, and this idea of imagining, to me, is gigantic. I think you're onto something because there's a pastor named Mark Batterson who wrote a book. He's written several. He's out of D.C., National Community Church in D.C.
Okay.
And he wrote a book, and in the book he talks about when you have a big dream for God, for yourself, what you want to do, and you physically write it out. Some people are better at that. Not a journal. I mean, literally, you sat at the laptop and you typed up, if I could have the best job description, or if I could start a new business, whatever it is, and you typed it up. And you want to bring that to God in prayer and say, is this what I should do? Why would you rip off a little corner of that and hand it to God? Kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Like, I don't know. Here, you think that's a good idea? Take the whole page and give it to him. Because he's a big God. You can't shock him. There's no sin he's not heard about. Just take your big dreams to God to reimagine. And the dilemma for a lot of us is God is going to answer in His time. And I've already admitted to you that's a frustration for me because
same here.
I got stuff to do. But I've done this, and I think when you imagine and you dream again, we have permission at every age in life now to dream again. And some of us go through life thinking, I'm not worthy of dreaming, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not, whatever it is. And just know that you're created in the image of God, and if that's the case, you may be a diamond with some flaws in it, but man, you're a diamond, so don't hold back.
I tell people, yes, I'm just nodding my head because I fit into that a little bit, and it hits home with me. I mean, I've gone through quite a bit the last 5 years, and I'm still going through it, but I'm on the upswing right now, back where confidence, mental mindset, trying to find my joy, not there yet. So I'm going to hit pause on what I was about ready to say. I'm going to circle back to the joy thing. Joy versus happiness. So I talk about change versus transformational change. Change is happiness. Transformational change is joy. Because change can be surface level. I want to start wearing blue jackets. Or I'm going to start going to the gym 4 days a week, and then all of a sudden that lasts for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That change just kind of dissipates in life. And where transformational change or joy is going to come deep within oneself and dig in. Like for me, I had to dig through the darkness of my depression to come out of this, and nobody knew I was depressed. Nobody. Wow. I hid it, and that's a problem though. When you hide your pain, and as a man, it's even harder. Well, we're stereotyped to be non-caring and non-sensitive.
Well, we don't hang out with a lot of, like, women tend to have places they go, or they tend to meet somebody they never even knew in the bathroom, and they come out and they got 3 new friends, and I'm like, how'd you do that, right?
Exactly.
But you're right, we don't do this well.
No, so I held all that in. And we, 3 years ago, if you and I could have met and we're sitting here having a conversation, you would never know I was darkly depressed. And I was so disconnected from the world. And it's one thing, that's why I stopped doing social media. I stopped doing a lot of things. I finally, a year and a half ago, it's been almost 2 years now, I reached a point in my life where I said, I need to change, but it has to be sustainable, long-term change. I chose therapy. I still go every Tuesday to this day. I don't think I'll ever stop. I love it. But it's fine. I'm finding through that change, transformation coming out of it equals joy. And now I'm becoming this new person that I never honestly thought I'd ever be. Like, I'm starting to like myself for the first time in years.
Well,
that's sad to say, but I mean,
it's not
that's
sad.
what this show's helped me get there.
It's so nice to hear you be as authentic as you are, and I applaud you for that, because it's not every day you hear somebody do it on camera.
Right.
The other part of that, and I lived with a dad who suffered from anxiety and depression his whole life, so I lived it on a different side of it.
Yeah.
And so I see what it is, and for anybody out there who has someone in their life who's dealing with that, and again, it's all based on what the context is.
Correct.
I came to realize as a son, I couldn't shake him out of it. I couldn't do a Three Stooges slap you out of it.
Yep.
You know, I couldn't, unlike a broken arm, I can't say, hey, Dad, get in the car, let's go get a cast on it, and you'll be fixed in 6 weeks. Yeah. None of those things worked, and so it was very difficult to deal with. But that still never meant that I should give up.
Right.
On trying to help him find joy or getting to those moments where there was joy. So I applaud you for really talking about it, and I mean, it just makes me feel great that you're finding joy and finding a different place for yourself, because you deserve it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I try to, through this show and every guest, and based off their experience and what they're doing that aligns to the mission of this show, share with my audience as much as I can about that. It's okay. I myself am still going through the life struggle, and it relates to people. I mean, at least I hope it relates to some people and gives them hope. And so that's why I try to throw a little bit of my story in there, because I don't come on. It isn't about me. It's about them and your story and us together, giving some inspiration to say it's okay to be vulnerable.
And I think transformational change is, that's probably something in the business world people have talked about a lot. It's like reverse engineering. It's a phrase that pops out of there, but it's still applicable in our personal lives.
Right.
The thing that I think is critical too, and we see this in ourselves, I'm going to start the diet on Monday, I'm going to go start working out January 8th, and by the 15th I'm not. But I think more important than all of that, of falling off the wagon, because you can always get back on, is you can't begin something if you don't start it.
That's true.
And so I think what you're doing, this encouragement of starting something big, starting something new, looking for transformational change, you shouldn't be scared about starting it, because if you just sit around lamenting, there's a whole book in the Bible about lamenting. If you just sit there going, oh, I don't know, you've got to start.
Just got to start.
And I remember there's a video that's gone viral by Steve Harvey online, and it was during a commercial break of Family Feud, and he takes questions from the audience, and it was a young girl who raised her hand and asked him a question, and I forget the exact question, but he basically was saying sometimes we have to get to the very edge of the Grand Canyon, and then he wrote a book about this entitled Jump. Sometimes we have to get to the edge and just jump. You don't know what you're jumping into. You may not even know why you've jumped into the new job, the transformational change, the finding a therapist because you need to find somebody professional. Jump. And I think that's a good encouragement for all of us. Just every once in a while, just take a flying leap and say, I'm going to see how that goes.
Yeah. And I like that, because I think when I said I was going to hit pause, and I'm going to come back to that real quick, is I think, people, life just doesn't happen. We are empowered to make our lives whatever we want it to become, as long as we are open-minded to reinventing ourselves, imagining better, taking sometimes a bold step forward, jumping, those risks. And they don't have to be risks that you just, if it fails, you lost everything. They might be that way. Depends on the person and their personality and level of risk that they're comfortable with. But Jacob Brown, he is a good friend of mine and has been on a guest. In fact, he was guest number 1 outside of the pilot program. And he is known for Fail Forward. He's got his new book coming out, Fail Forward. And it's like every time I hear people talk about failure, we're all fearful of that, right? Yeah. But his analogy, he played football, and I think you'll like this, is because he says, when you're down on the 1 yard line, about ready to make that touchdown. If you were to fall, the coaches say fall forward. It's no different in life. If you're scared to fail, it's okay to fail. Just fail forward. Learn from that experience.
Sure.
So I think same thing in life. As we're going through, trying to live a healthier lifestyle through wellness, whether it's mental wellness, physical, our health.
Spiritual wellness.
Spiritual wellness
if you're off
is
there,
huge.
you could be off in all the other realms.
That's like the tire that's unbalanced. You have 4 tires on a car and you have one's unbalanced, right?
Right.
Your spiritual welfare.
Yeah.
So then the ability to find that joy. So in what you're doing now, tell us, how does all that how do you play those 3 together? And what does success look like out of that for you with people you help? Does that make sense?
I think, and I love the idea of falling forward or falling up. Richard Rohr, who's I believe was a Catholic priest, is a Catholic priest, wrote a book about that too from a spiritual standpoint.
Nice.
Is the idea that, if you trip, you can trip up and move forward in life. Yeah. I think this idea of finding joy can be very elusive. And I think people tie that a lot to finding, and it's a big, if you scour the internet, you'll find now, since the days of Bob Buford and this halftime movement, which was really started 25, 30 years ago, everybody and their brother has got some angle on purpose. Find your purpose, buy my book, come to my webinar,
you're not kidding.
And I think it's a very elusive thing to find a purpose. I would argue, coming into your studio with you today, I see the drive in you to create something from scratch.
Thank you.
You're finding a purpose in this. It doesn't mean it's your whole purpose in life, but you're finding joy, happiness in something bigger than self.
Yes.
And I think that's a real key to this. And it takes a minute. Don't be frustrated because you can't nail it right away.
Right.
Because finding the thing. I remember I was on a ship. It was a music cruise, and Christopher Cross, sailing, Arthur's theme. My wife and I love sailing, the song. We know it belongs to everybody, but it's our song.
That's right.
So we're just happy to see him on the ship. And there was a moment where he was off in a room playing acoustic guitar, taking questions, which was really cool.
Oh, that would.
And we knew that night we'd see him in the big auditorium on the ship, but this was more intimate, a couple hundred people.
Okay.
And someone said, "How'd you come up with that song, Sailing?" He said, "Well, everybody thinks it's about sailboats, and picture Lake St. Clair, right? You're on the east side, and you see these sailboats go by in the middle of July, and everybody thinks it's about that. Blue water, sailboats." And he said, "You'll see that behind me tonight on the big screens behind me when I perform it." But he said, it has nothing to do with sailboats.
Oh, I would have thought that.
Right?
Yeah.
And he says, "So here's where it comes from. I have a friend who's an artist, painter, and I went to her studio, and she's painting this giant canvas. And as she's painting it, I said to her, 'How do you do that as an artist?'" Now that's interesting in the way he said it, because he is an artist, but a different kind of artist. She looked at him and she said, "I don't know, man. All I do is I paint. I just sail away. I don't know where I go."
Oh,
and I think that, for me, gardening, I can tell you right now, I could go out with you without you helping me on a Saturday. I could get filled with dust and bark mulch and dirt and grimy and sweaty, and 2 hours goes by, and my wife will have to say, "Don't forget, it's time to have lunch." Time sails away. That's just one example.
Yes.
I don't have a lot of them, but if you can find that thing where time just sails away, another way that it's been framed is, what would you do in life for free if you could? This is a really interesting question.
That is huge.
Even as a job, what would you do for half the salary if you could? I've had men and women come up to me at a conference and say, "I'm a former CFO, I'm retired. I'd go to work for a great charity for half the money or no money if I could just find the opportunity." To me, that's the beginning of finding transformational change in your life, because you're saying, it's something bigger than me. I'm finding purpose and passion, and if you could find something where you could just sail away, what is that thing?
Right.
What is that thing?
I can't wait to find it.
And then embrace it.
Right.
Then embrace it the best you can. I mean, not everybody can afford to quit their job. I don't mean that.
No. I think
but
everyone.
I think that's a key to trying to find some of these moments that can lead to an extended period of time of joy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I that's interesting, because I actually thought that was sailing, and I'm sure everyone out there is thinking the same thing. And, jumping in your sailboat and sailing away, just getting rid of the land and all the problems that go with it. and it had nothing to do with it. It was a friend painting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Japanese have a word for that, ikigai. The Swedes or the Norwegians, somebody has, this idea of just finding your purpose,
right.
embracing it, and finding quiet time to do that thing. And your joy, your ikigai, you're sailing away, may come from sitting and being quiet in the midst of contemplating life or God. Awesome. It doesn't have to be this big, giant apartment building of something, or
right.
Trying to recreate creating a new charity, or it doesn't have to be that big. It
right.
can be something that's simple. So I try to encourage people to think and pray deeply about that, and that's another thing that I think has been helpful for me.
That's nice.
Is finding time to think deeply.
Yeah.
We're in a very busy world. Ding, 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 stuff is going off all the time, and trying to find time to quiet your life is a critical thing right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. I feel like I move at the speed of now, and sometimes I need to just go, okay.
It feels good.
Take the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does feel good. I for months now I've been doing meditation, but I do it different. Like when I first did it, I think I was doing it the more traditional way everyone knows about meditation. Sit there and whatever, like a Buddhist or a monk or whatever up on the mountainside. And then the more guests I had on the show that we talked about meditation, I've learned there's different ways to meditate. It's really up to us, the individual. Mm-hmm. One of my guests, Anthony Gruppito, he finds meditation in movement. So when he's at the gym on the treadmill or the cycle, he gets into a frame of mind and he's focused and he's in his breathing, and that's meditation for him. And I got thinking, wow, that makes sense. I didn't realize you can meditate like that.
Yeah.
So I actually relate to that, and I find more meditation that way. But that meditation gets me grounded into the moment and not moving at the speed of now, where I've got thinking about my calendar and everything I've got. Because I'm like that too with you, like I have things to do. Come on,
Right.
And that's sad because for me, and I hate admitting this, but I'm all about instant gratification, and I'm working on this one. Oh my God, it's terrible. Not everything in my life, but it's up there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn to relax and plan for a little bit things, and I'm like,
My dad, along with anxiety and depression, suffered from hypertension.
Oh, really?
And I remember he got himself, we encouraged him to get a home. He had several of them because some of them were better than others. A home cuff where you could measure your blood pressure.
Okay.
And he would wind up in the hospital. His blood pressure would race over 200.
Oh, my.
The top number, and he'd have to be hospitalized. And it turned out he didn't eat well, he didn't hydrate. So there were a lot of physical parts of this in his later years.
Right.
But I remember sitting with him, and we put the cuff on, and his blood pressure would be up, the top number 170. I mean, something crazy. I'd say, Dad, close your eyes. Yeah. Close your eyes. Just be quiet. Start deep breathing. Picture maybe the prettiest place you've ever wanted to go or you would go. And we know it intellectually that it's probably going to happen, but I watched the numbers go down on the cuff instantly.
Oh, wow.
Into the normal range for him, which was still probably over 120 on the top number.
Yeah.
But when you calm yourself. So Anthony's maybe got a different MO for this, right? So he's finding this Zen moment in a different place.
Yeah.
In a Catholic tradition, I've returned to the Catholic Church, there's an idea of, it's called Lectio Divina, to literally sit and contemplate, meditate on something. It could be, you could even not only meditate on a part of Scripture, you could also, there's another version of it, to meditate on a beautiful stained glass window or on a beautiful object on your table.
Right.
To literally just take your mind off the rest of the world and just sit there for a moment. And sometimes God will even speak to you in those moments. You're like, oh, I wasn't thinking about that idea.
Yeah.
So I encourage you to do that. Yeah.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think anything for me personally that I can just kind of find that moment of
we need
calmness.
Them
I think
right.
we all need to.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like you sat with your dad, your father there, and you got him to just close his eyes, think of something calming, and then right there live now, it changed his moment.
I have a doctor buddy who's no longer practicing medicine in the sense that he doesn't have a practice.
Right.
But he's still a doctor, and I would visit him. And the first thing he would do is talk to me, how's it going? We would talk about whatever.
Right.
And then toward the end, he would go over to his office, he would close the blinds, he'd come over to the chair, kneel down, and the last thing he did at a doctor's visit in the office was take your blood pressure. And I picked this up from him. I didn't invent this practice with my dad. He would say, close your eyes. If it's a beach, if it's an ocean, go to the happy place, and now let me take your blood pressure. That's way different than most of our visits where you run up the stairs or you come in the office and you're already tense because you got white coat syndrome and you're like, oh man, I don't want to see the doctor now. And that's when they take your blood pressure. Bro, just the wrong time. So I don't know how we change that in the world, but if you wear a white coat, please take it at the end. It's a lot better.
Yes.
It's a lot more normal.
Right. So leaving us here today in this episode, I mean, what were some advice you would give to some of our audience about, how could they embrace and find joy in their life? Because I mean, that's to a lot of people, that might be up here that they don't know what that looks like.
Sure.
And then the wellness component is everything, I think, all the way around, regardless, body, mind, and spirit. We briefly chatted about that on the phone. Spirit can be taken as it's God. Spiritually, it could be within oneself, whatever their preference is out there, I guess. But in our case, of faith-driven men, I think spiritual is God and how we align with that. So walk us through what would those three things that the wellness, the reinventing, and joy, what does that look like for the rest of us?
I think wellness is going to start with trying to find it in different ways. And we may not be off, that wobbly tire or the car is out of alignment. We know when that's happening because we kind of feel the car pulling or we hear a thud.
Yeah.
When that's happening in your life, I think it's wise to take stock in the inventory. Well, where is that thud? Is it the right front? Is it the left rear? What's the meter say about the tire pressure? Right. So I think we need to understand ourselves, and I'm a big fan on knowing thyself. I've taken Strengths Finders test. I've been tested for my spiritual gifting. I've known my research from TV news days. For me, knowing a bit more about how I'm wired, whether I need a therapist, a coach, I just need a buddy who I can talk to over coffee or something. I think taking an inventory and knowing. And then don't be afraid to start something. And again, wisdom from Bob Buford, God rest his soul. Yeah. When you're thinking of jumping, this I think is very wise too. He calls it something a little different, but dip your toe in the water. He calls that small cost probes. In other words, here's a great example. I think I want to go help volunteer at the Red Cross, people giving blood.
Right.
But you didn't know until you got there that you pass out when you see blood. So he's saying, dip your toe in the water.
Right.
If you're okay doing that, we'll lean into it and jump. But that may mean that you dip your toe in the water for 5 or 6 things to find joy, wellness, higher purpose.
That makes
and
a lot
maybe
of sense.
5 of them are not your deal, but one of them may turn out to be. So just practice a small cost probe before you really lean in. And I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
And then this idea of spiritual wellness. Think deeply and go to God in prayer. He's He's there for all of us. And again, as a person of faith, I think it's critical. It's much more than the coach telling us to see through the walls. Our team will win. I used to operate my whole life like that, and it kind of worked.
Yeah.
And then I realized, no, there's a higher power, and sometimes me just seeing through the walls with a positive mental attitude. It's healthy, but sometimes I need more help than that.
The bigger coach.
Yeah. Bigger coach.
It's and that's eventually doing all these things, find you your the joy in your life. Yeah. Right? Because it's interesting, and then we'll wrap up here, but I think it's interesting that when people take a step back, and again, I am envisioning myself doing this because I've done this so many times. You just take a step back and you just allow yourself to look at everything in front of you. Because for me, one of my biggest challenges is I self-sabotage myself with my negative thoughts about myself. I am my worst enemy. I beat myself up. So what I've learned over the last year and a half ago in therapy is I do have a lot of great things in life. And I pray every day to thank God for the things I'm blessed with.
Being grateful.
Being very grateful. And that helps me go, you know what? Hey, so far today, nothing really negative has happened in my day. But knowing me, I'll find something to, bitch at about myself somehow. But I'll sit there and I got to remind myself, I am humbled and grateful that Chuck joined me on Imagine Better today. I saw my kids off to school safely today.
You woke up breathing. How about we all start there?
Let's start the day there, right? So, no, I love this topic, and I'm so thankful that you took time out of your busy schedule to see me and join me in the studio. So thank you.
Good to see you, and God bless all you're doing, because I think you're helping a lot of people.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've helped me today, and it's I love you, and I didn't even know you. So
yes,
so I'm a big fan.
I'm a new fan over here, guys. New friend. So you guys, remember, go out to the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the notification button so you don't miss other amazing episodes like this one. Share this content. Help us spread this mission about helping people have access to resources and guiding points in their life that they don't have. If you know somebody who's struggling and going through whatever life challenges they are, imagine better. Help them get through this challenge, this stepping stone in life. Reach out, ask questions on this episode. I'm sure Chuck and I will have time, and we'll love to answer if you guys do that. So have a great day, guys. Love you guys. Imagine better. And Chuck, that wraps up this episode, my friend.
Be well. Take good care, everybody.